don't listen, I don't learn, I don't follow anyone's word. Looking. I fucking love the Scouse accent, by the way. But anyway, what we're going to talk about in this video is how success is almost backwards in a funny way. We come to YouTube just like you're here. We come to books. We come to all of these resources which are so abundant nowadays just for them to literally take us back in our journey to success. So stick around for this not even that long video because I don't like to overcomplicate things. If you want to understand what the nature of reality is and why achieving your goal is much simpler than you actually think it is. Listen, the reason that we feel all of these emotions is for the same reason, and it's not because our current reality is bad. That's a very, very big misconception. It's actually because of something much deeper than this. So let's just take a quick look at them. We feel nervous, not because our current reality is bad, not because we feel nervous for no reason whatsoever. It really isn't that binary. If we think of, for example, a public speech coming up or a family gathering and we feel nervous about it, it's for one reason and one reason only. There's multiple outcomes this event can have, either good or bad, and we don't know which one it's going to be. We're afraid that it's going to be the bad one. That's why we feel nervous. It's because of the uncertainty and the possibility of a negative reality manifesting. If we're unhappy, although yes, that can be because, our current reality kind of sucks, more often than not, it's going to be because we're afraid of how the future is going to look like. Just think about it. If you lose a loved one, for example, if you break up in your relationship, it's not because right now is that bad. There's probably not that much that actually changed. The reason we're unhappy is because we don't know what life will look like without them. We're afraid that change in the future might manifest in a negative kind of way. And if we're feeling depressed, likewise, actually this is a bit different, but it's somewhat the same still. It's not just because we feel so sad all the time, it's kind of because we don't really see a way out of it. If you've spoken to a depressed person or any kind of psychiatrist who understands depression to its core, it's not just, oh no, I'm sad, boo-hoo. It's because I logically don't see a way out of this. It's all in regard to the future. And although this final example is a bit backward, we must understand that all of this stems from one problem, and that problem is clarity. Once we lose clarity on a situation, we end up understanding nothing about it. Lack of clarity is a roadblock to happiness. It's a roadblock to success, because if we don't know what to do, we end up in overdrive, we end up stressed, and we end up doing fuck all. One of my mentors once said, success is incredibly simple, yet very hard. Pause on that. The reason that's important is because success, realistically, if you think about it, really isn't that complicated. I mean, all you have to do if you're a runner and you want to become an Olympic runner is you have to run. You have to run once or twice a day. You have to sleep 9 hours a night. You have to focus on recovery. I don't know, maybe I need to buy new shoes every now and then. It's really not that complicated. It's quite simple, but it's also very hard. And the reason it's hard, other than, the part of being running fucking exhausting, it's because life happens. It's because you will get opinions from strangers. It's because you will get invites from friends. It's because you will get some random injury. It's because life happens. And especially if you keep adding extra variable upon extra variable upon extra variable, life will take you apart. One thing that happened to me when I started my journey on entrepreneurship, this is me, by the way, what a cool picture, no? Anyway, what happened to me was I wanted to make money when I dropped out of university. I was like, I'm going to make it work, I'm going to show my parents, etc., etc. And I switched around from an education company, a marketing agency, a content theme page on Instagram, an education no, I already said that. Yeah, I also had a fucking a pseudo software business, a white label software business. And then finally I went back to marketing agency, which finally worked. Had I just stuck with one thing, whatever that may be, I would have made money much sooner. And of course we can say it was a learning experience and I learned so much from it, which is, partially true. If you just stick to one thing and you do it, you're going to get results. A lot of times, ignorance is bliss. Knowing less is bliss, because what ends up happening is this guy, he's here and he's smiling and he tells me, hey, do this. And then this other guy comes and, they all want to sell me a course. And then they're like, no, do this. And I'm like, what the fuck? Who do I listen to? And the problem is, I don't have any skin in the game. I don't have any other information. All I have is what they're saying. And that's what I have to make my decisions based upon. And even nowadays, even now when I'm making good money, I have multiple businesses, I'm still thinking the same way. Of course, I've become a bit more stoic. I've become able to manage my emotions, etc., better. But I still find that when other information enters the realm of my psyche, I take it into account. when oftentimes I shouldn't. One of the best examples for this is that I had this guy who was constantly a very, very good mentor of mine, and he actually gave me a lot of good advice. And one day he just started saying, wake up at 5 a.m., wake up at 5 a.m., wake up at 5 a.m. And I tried. I really, really tried. I woke up at 5 a.m., I slept back in, and then 2 weeks later I would convince myself to wake up at 5 a.m. and I'd do the same thing. One day I'd wake up and then the next day I wouldn't. And it just kept being this constant battle. And I would constantly ask myself, why am I not able to wake up at 5 a.m.? Something must be wrong with me. Okay, I'm going to get this type of alarm clock. Okay, I'm going to get like a light which slowly brights up and like emulates the sunlight. Okay, I'm going to get nose strips. Fuck, I've even got nose strips here. Look, it's like crazy. And what I ended up doing was making a battle about something that wasn't even important. As a matter of fact, if you take into account chronotypes, research actually suggests not that, waking up at 5 a.m. or early for that matter is magical by itself. It actually suggests somewhat of the opposite. For most people, waking up at different times of the day will be beneficial. For me, I've always been a dolphin chronotype, which means if I wake up at like a normal schedule, it's probably the best for me. Waking up at like 7, 8 a.m., in the middle, not too late, not too early. That's going to be the best for me. That's when I'm going to be producing the best work. That's when I'm going to be the most healthy. And I took this advice just because this wanker, excuse my language, was saying to do this, do that, and I was just taking advice blindly. And to give myself a bit of credit, it wasn't even blindly, because this is quite like a commonly purported narrative on social media. A lot of people say this. And you might not even realize how much information you're taking into account, which is making you dumber. Here's the thing. If you took a step back and asked yourself, what is my goal? And you literally wrote it out on a piece of paper in one sentence. What is my goal? Okay? And you reverse engineered it. You'd be like, what would it be unreasonable for me to do where I don't achieve this goal? So if your goal is to get $10,000 in sales commission, you'd be like, well, how many calls do I have to take? Okay, how can I get that many calls? How can I get on a good offer? Okay, how can I guarantee that those calls actually turn into money? How can I have a close percentage of, let's say, 40%? Maybe you pay for trainings on this half of the equation. Maybe you, also pay for trainings on this half of the equation. Maybe you practice mocks. The point is, it's not that difficult. After 5 minutes of thinking, you should have this whole map of what you need to do to achieve your goal. The problem is, one day you're going to be living your life, it's going to be your average Monday, someone's going to come up to you and they're going to have this huge opportunity. They're going to have this new book that changed their life. You're going to be scrolling Instagram and you're going to see a new method to do. Even yesterday, I'll show you the video. It was this one. It's what it takes to run a sub 25k. Anyway, what I ended up doing is I watched this video and I was like, damn, I want to run a 20k. All these people are clapping. It's like, it's so cool. I ran recently and I got like 27 minutes or something. And I was like, how cool would it be to run a sub 25k? And I'd love to say that I, noticed this belief right away and I stripped it away and it didn't really matter to me anymore. And I was like, yeah, that's a fake belief. I don't want to go down that line. But I indulged in it. I had this long, extensive chat with ChatGPT. Just look at this, bro. I was messaging it stuff like, okay, yeah, but if I'm training this much and I'm currently on this kind of split and I'm this year old and I'm this gender, and I was like, okay, but if I want to be like certain that I was going into the fucking details of this. I was planning to make this my 1 year plan to get to sub 25k. And then yesterday night I sat down, right? I sit down and I'm like, what's going to change in my life if I do that? I've never really aspired to be a runner. It's kind of cool. Sometimes I do it. I even ran today. But it's like, I don't give a fuck about running. I started considering this piece of advice when it had nothing to do with me. When it just looked a little cool, I was like, yes, I'm going to dedicate a year of my life to this. I want to increase my finances. I want to lift bigger weights. I want to read more books. I want to start making music. These are things that I really care about. And I was like, no, I'm going to start running. Yeah, that's the thing to do right now. And we do this so much more than we'd like to admit. Taking advice, whether it's some random guy talking to you about 5 a.m. morning routines or some random video you see on YouTube, is doing more wrong than is doing good. The reason we like to get into this narrative of, I'm just on YouTube to learn, guys, I'm just here to learn, is because it gives us this kind of facade. It gives us this feeling that we're actually being productive in our search for dopamine. Out of scrolling on YouTube, what we want actually, there's a very good word for this, is plausible deniability. That's what we want. Plausible deniability is the ability of an individual or organization to deny knowledge of responsibility for a certain action, even when they were directly involved, because there's no definitive evidence to prove their awareness or involvement. What we do when we open up YouTube, and we're looking at stuff, and we're trying to find a video which is educative, and we're trying to tell ourselves that we're on YouTube for educative purposes to learn, right, guys? We're keeping up this facade with ourselves that, yes, I'm here for information. Yes, I'm just here to learn. Well, here's something, right? If you want to go on YouTube ever again, and you really, really want to learn, what you must do is you must download this extension, and you must turn it on. And you must only consume using the search bar. If you're like, well, I'm an email marketer, I'm just going to be like, how do I increase my open rates? That's learning, because you just search for that. You can click on a video now, okay? This is allowed. You can actually like indulge in these kind of videos now. However, if you were to click on this Alex Becker video, he'd probably tell you about how amazing he is. He'd probably tell you about how much money he makes and how his software business is the best thing since sliced bread, which is cool, by the way, but it's not the main thing. It would get you distracted because, truth be told, again, not a diss to Alex Becker, he's a much better entrepreneur than I am, you wouldn't actually get anything from this video. In football practice or soccer coaching or whatever the fuck Americans call it, you would say this, or your coach would say this quite a lot to you: keep your eyes on the ball, because it's very important, of course, to keep your eyes on the ball. There's only one ball on the pitch. And the thing is, in life, I find myself repeating this sentence more often than I would like to admit, because I keep looking away from the ball and I struggle to internalize this ball being the main thing. If I sit down and if I ask myself, what's going to make me happy? I know. I'll come to the conclusion. I don't need anyone else to tell me. And if you don't, by the way, which is totally fine, just fucking sit. How about instead of that 2 hours when you're on YouTube and you're scrolling and you have this plausible deniability that you're actually trying to learn, but if anyone called you out on it, you'd be like, no, I'm learning, I'm watching this video that is totally unrelated but somewhat educative, just to tell myself that I'm learning. Anyway, if you cut that shit out and you started sitting on the couch doing nothing, you'd start to realize that the only thing here is your brain. And you're going to start getting thoughts from within. You're not going to fill up your mind with how many goals Cristiano Ronaldo scored for Al Nassr or how many Ballon d'Ors Messi robbed. You're going to start thinking about, damn, I'm getting thoughts which are inside of my own mind. First of all, you're going to probably start thinking about conversations you have or you had or didn't have. You're going to start thinking about what to do tomorrow. But then you're going to start realizing that you're a person and you have values and you have ideas, and those things are going to start to come up and you're going to start to know thyself, which is the most important thing you could possibly know. All in all, if you stop taking other people's advice, no matter how smart that person may be, they don't have one key ingredient, and that's context. They don't know your life. They don't know what you look like. They don't know your genetics. When they give you information, you must really critically think about it, if that's true for you or if it's not true for you. And the way you do that is by detaching and only listening to yourself. Now you have the information, let's think it through. Is it actually valuable for me? Well, if I did a bit of this thinking, I'd realize that no, I'm not that chronotype, right? And even if the person's really smart, again, they lack context, so they're not going to tell you what to do realistically. And what this allows you to do is to detach from these external nuggets of information. Of course, if you find something very, very valuable, you can take it. But most importantly, if you're detached from all of this stuff that's on the outside, all of these kind of dots that are on the outside of your path, you start seeing what's ahead. And that's very, very important because it takes us back to the initial point of this video, which is clarity. If you find yourself any of these emotions for a constant, long period of while, it's likely because you don't know where you're going in your life. It's likely because you don't have a clear roadmap of the future. Most important thing is to know what you want. And if you don't know what you want, you're probably lying because to some extent you know what you want. Maybe you just don't want to admit it. And if you totally don't know what you want, then just literally lock yourself in a cupboard until you find out what you do. But if you do know what you want, it's more likely that you don't know how to get there. And again, that's because of lack of clarity. Just research it. Give it like 10 minutes. Reverse engineer, because it's really, really not that difficult to figure out what you need to get. And do it. Again, success is very simple, but also hard. Pause again. So stop taking that much advice, and anytime someone wants to unload a barrage of advice onto you, feel free to tell them to fuck off. Be like, cool, but I didn't ask you. Because if you listen to them too much, it will just bring you back to these kind of emotions, and that's not a place you want to be.